Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a man escapes the corporate grind to build a quiet life in the Arizona desert, he thinks he's found peace until a luxury HOA forges documents, paves a road through his land, and sparks a war they never saw coming. This isn't just trespassing. This is war. When I first laid eyes on the 12 acres of raw land nestled against the dusty foothills of southern Arizona, something clicked. Not a romantic kind of click, like people say when they meet the one. More like a stubborn, satisfying crunch, the kind you hear when your boots sink into gravel and you realize this is yours now. After almost 2 decades of working in corporate infrastructure planning, airports, highways, logistics routes no one ever appreciated, I cashed out early, broke ties with bureaucracy, and drove west until the road ended in dirt. Then I went a little further. The land had no HOA. That was the point. I'd specifically filtered my property search to exclude anything within a homeowners association jurisdiction. No newsletters about mailbox colors, no warnings about weeds longer than 3 inches, and definitely no quarterly meetings full of people named Carol and Gary discussing whether the community gazebo was underutilized. My parcel was on unincorporated land, boxed in to the west by federal territory. No one could build beyond me. And to the south by a gated development called Desert Crest Canyon. I didn't think much of that at first. Their property line ended well before mine began. They had their rules. I had space, silence, and 12 blessed acres of peace. I spent the first few months getting the lay of the land, building out a modest but sturdy house with a wide wraparound porch, then a separate workshop where I kept my tools, solar batteries, and a rebuilt 1971 Bronco I'd been working on since I lived in Houston. The road leading up to my property was a rough gravel trail that curved north, but there was an old ranch access route along my southern edge, just a rocky path used decades ago by some long-gone utility crew. I restored it a bit for deliveries during construction, mostly gravel and compacted dirt, just wide enough for a flatbed. That southern path was never meant for traffic. Hell, it wasn't even really a road. But a few months after I settled in, I noticed tire tracks showing up where they shouldn't be. First a few, then more. Deep ruts from sedans and SUVs began appearing in the loose gravel. A silver Audi with tinted windows came flying through one morning while I was unloading lumber. It didn't even slow down, just plowed through the path like it belonged there. I blinked, wiped the sweat from my brow, and thought maybe it was a one-off. Some idiot following Google Maps too literally. It wasn't. Over the next couple of weeks, the pattern repeated. Jeeps, Teslas, trucks, some clean, some coated in the same red dust that stained my boots, rolled across the path like it was some kind of shortcut. I checked my security cameras and saw Arizona plates. A quick cross-reference online told me all of them were registered in Desert Crest Canyon. That's when the pit started forming in my stomach. I drove out to the junction one day just before sunset, parked, and watched. Within 20 minutes, 8 different vehicles used my path as a shortcut between the back exit of the gated community and the county road that led north. They weren't lost. They knew exactly what they were doing. My private access road had become their little convenience trail, so I did what any rational landowner would do. I printed and posted a pair of aluminum signs, private property, no trespassing, no through traffic, and installed them at either end of the road, just to set expectations. Not confrontational, just clear. The next morning, I found one of the signs ripped off its post and tossed into the dry wash. The other had a brand new coffee cup lid stuck to it with gum, like some toddler's idea of protest. I reviewed the footage and saw a white SUV slow roll past the sign, brake, then reverse. A woman, blonde, sunglasses, suburban camo, stepped out, snapped a photo of the sign, then yanked it down like she was removing trash from her own driveway. License plate traced back to, you guessed it, Desert Crest Canyon. I didn't call anyone. Not yet. I wasn't ready to throw down gloves and lawyers over a dirt trail, but something in her body language, in the casual entitlement of it, rubbed me raw. This wasn't a mistake. This was ownership, assumed and unearned. I started recording everything, every car, every plate, every breach, because whatever they thought this was, it sure as hell wasn't over. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat on my porch with a mug of black coffee that went cold twice, watching the stars slip behind the ridgeline while my motion alerts kept pinging every 15 minutes like a broken doorbell. The same pattern: lights, tires, dust, gone. Every single car drove through like it was their birthright. By dawn, I'd made up my mind. I was done watching. Time to draw a line. But fate beat me to it. Around 6 the next morning, I woke to the sound of engines. Not just one or two, but a whole damn convoy. Diesel rumbling, hydraulics hissing, and the sharp clang of metal on rock. I pulled on boots and walked down the ridge trail to the southern edge of my property. What I saw made me stop dead in my tracks. They were paving the road, not fixing it, not smoothing it out, paving it. Fresh black asphalt stretched across what had been my utility path, laid down with surgical precision. A road crew in reflective vests moved like ants. Compactors, pavers, surveyors with laser levels. Metal posts had been hammered into the shoulders, already hung with yellow diamond signs that read, "Caution, Community Access Route." I stood there in a daze, trying to compute what I was seeing. That wasn't just infrastructure. That was intent. A man in a county vest approached, clipboard in hand. "Morning. You must be the owner, right?" I nodded slowly, more out of habit than agreement. "What the hell is this?" He looked confused, then pointed to the sheet attached to his clipboard. "This is part of the Desert Crest Community Mobility Relief Project. This shortcut was approved last quarter. We got the green light through the Community Development Fund. Right-of-way agreements all on file." "It says you signed off." I stared at him. "I did not sign off on anything." He raised an eyebrow, clearly uncomfortable. "Well, someone with your name did. Your parcel number's on the permit. Look, I'm just the site guy. You want to argue jurisdiction, talk to the registrar or your HOA. I don't have an HOA. He gave me a look that said, "Yeah, buddy, good luck with that," and walked away. I turned back toward the house, fury already rising. By the time I reached my workshop, I was running on adrenaline and disbelief. I pulled out my property records, clean, no easements, no agreements, nothing even close to a right-of-way authorization. I checked my email, my mail, nothing. Then I checked the county records portal. There it was, scanned and stamped. Agreement of shared use and easement, parcel 17B, signed, Caleb Rivers. Dated 5 months before I even bought the land. A shaky scribble for a signature, wrong format, wrong pen. But to anyone looking at the PDF, it was as official as rain. My first thought was, holy shit, they forged my name. My second was, they've been planning this for months. Before I even bought the land, they were laying track for this. I made 2 calls. First, to a friend from my old job in infrastructure, now a GIS analyst. She confirmed the parcel overlays didn't match the real topography. "There's been tampering," she said. "They manually adjusted the southern property boundary line in the online GIS layer. It's subtle, but someone edited the base map." Second call, a real estate attorney named Marcia Levy. She'd taken down 2 HOAs in New Mexico and once made a city councilman cry in a deposition. She picked up on the third ring and didn't even hesitate when I told her what happened. "They forged a pre-sale easement," she said. "That's not a mistake. That's organized fraud." By sunset, I had copies of the original deed, a topo survey scheduled for the weekend, and a list of names she wanted me to document. Every driver, every email, every signpost. That night, I walked the new road again. It was smooth, perfect even, a 2-lane miracle through my dirt. At the western edge, someone had posted a laminated HOA notice on a steel pole. "Thank you for your patience and support as we expand Desert Crest Canyon's safe access options. This new community bypass is made possible through cooperation with our neighbors." Underneath that, in smaller print, all usage agreements on file with the county. My name was nowhere on it, but their fingerprints were all over everything. As I tore the notice off and crumpled it in my hand, I heard another car approaching, silver, tinted, the same Audi from before. The driver slowed, made eye contact as she passed, then gave me a little wave. I didn't wave back. This wasn't just trespass anymore. This was war. By the time Friday rolled around, I'd already filled half a notebook with plate numbers, names from HOA meeting minutes, and screenshots of their newsletter posts. Marcia told me to document everything. No detail too small, no assumption too obvious. Her exact words were, "Pretend they're Enron and you're the guy who just found the shredder still warm." The topo survey team arrived at dawn on Saturday. 2 guys from Tucson, ex-military, polite but quiet. They didn't ask questions. They flew a drone over my land, set up tripods at every corner of the property, and spent 5 hours with me confirming that, surprise, surprise, the freshly paved community road sliced 320 feet across my parcel. All of it. Outside any legitimate easement or shared use zone. In other words, they'd paved a highway right through my goddamn living room, legally speaking. I emailed the preliminary report to Marcia, and by Monday, we had a plan. It wasn't just going to be letters and complaints. We were going full throttle. Land use violations, forged documents, injunctive relief. I signed a retainer and sent her a hard drive full of surveillance footage with timestamps and notations. She whistled when she saw how many license plates I'd collected. "You're already doing half my job," she said. Meanwhile, I sent a formal cease and desist to the Desert Crest HOA and to the so-called Community Development Fund. I knew it wouldn't stop them, but it was about building a legal trail. Predictably, their response was immediate and deeply insulting. A tersely worded email from their counsel accusing me of harassment, obstruction of community traffic, and, I shit you not, creating unnecessary hardship for working families. This, coming from people who live in 3,000 square foot homes behind private gates and drive Range Rovers to Whole Foods for gluten-free muffins. But the cherry on top came the next day. I opened my mailbox and found a thick manila envelope. Return address, Desert Crest Canyon HOA. Inside was a glossy packet titled Community Notice of Concern. It included a photo of my workshop with a red circle around the driveway, accusing me of constructing obstructive barriers, a highlighted copy of the forged easement agreement, and a printed transcript of an HOA board meeting in which one member, some finance bro named Todd, claimed I was engaging in extortion through vehicular toll threats. I was still flipping pages when the doorbell rang. UPS delivery. A second envelope, this time from the county registrar's office. A formal notice of complaint had been filed against me, filed by Desert Crest Canyon HOA. They were trying to flip the script. Marcia wasn't surprised. They're going to try and bury you in paperwork, delay your filings, gaslight the registry. That's what HOA legal teams are built to do. It's not justice, it's attrition. I don't do attrition. That night, I took the first real counterpunch. I installed 2 retractable barrier gates at both ends of the illegally paved road, complete with motion sensors, license plate recognition, and wireless access logs. Then I mounted a digital payment system, a full-featured toll terminal with tap-to-pay functionality, QR code options, and a bright red LED screen that read, Private Property. Community access available for $9.99 per trip. Oversized vehicles, $29.99. Proceeds fund legal action against unauthorized use. I didn't stop there. I made laminated placards and delivered them to every mailbox in Desert Crest, all legal, all polite, explaining that until the matter was resolved in court, this road would operate as a private toll passage under Title 33 of the Arizona Revised Statutes. I even offered monthly subscriptions. Within 24 hours, the HOA Facebook page exploded. Someone leaked a screenshot. Who does this guy think he is? You can't just start charging people for a road, to which someone else responded, "Isn't it his land, though?" 2 days later, someone tried to vandalize the toll kiosk. The bastard ripped out the payment terminal and spray-painted thief across my gatepost. But I'd been ready. Motion cameras captured everything, including the full face of the dumbass teenager in a varsity jacket, later identified as the son of the HOA's secretary. I emailed the footage to Marcia and filed a property damage report with the sheriff's office. That night, I got an email from a burner account. No name, no context, just 4 words. They paid the county. I didn't know who sent it, but I had a pretty good guess. The walls were starting to crack. The message stuck with me. They paid the county. 4 words that ran through my mind like a song lyric I couldn't shake. I didn't know who sent it, but it felt like confirmation of something I'd suspected since the first day I saw that asphalt glistening on my land. That this wasn't just overreach or arrogance or some HOA president on a power trip. This was a goddamn racket. I forwarded the email to Marcia. She didn't reply right away, which meant she was busy doing the kind of digging that involved subpoenas and off-record phone calls. Meanwhile, I stayed on offense. Every passing vehicle got logged. Every plate entered into a spreadsheet. I put up a second camera with facial recognition and thermal tracking. If they wanted war, I'd fight with data. The first legal win came quicker than I expected. The HOA filed a motion for a temporary restraining order. They wanted the gates removed immediately, claimed I was committing extortion, obstructing vital community egress, and violating some archaic traffic safety statute. The judge shut them down in less than 5 minutes. Marcia barely had to speak. She presented the deed, topo maps, the time-stamped footage of the paving crew on my land without consent, and the forensic analysis of the forged signature. The judge's exact words were, "This is not a gray area. This is textbook trespass and possibly criminal fraud." The HOA attorney, some greasy mid-40s guy in an overpriced suit with a Bluetooth earpiece still in, looked like he'd swallowed a thumbtack. Karen Whitman, president of the Desert Crest Canyon HOA herself, was in the gallery that day. She didn't say a word, but she stared at me as I walked out, like she was already calculating her next move. I didn't have to wait long. That weekend, flyers started showing up in Desert Crest mailboxes. Not from me this time. These were glossy, color-printed, official-looking HOA bulletins warning residents about the unlawful toll scheme being conducted by a hostile neighbor with a history of boundary disputes. They included a full-page screed about my refusal to cooperate with reasonable community infrastructure efforts and a call to arms. Support the HOA as we defend our shared values. They even quoted scripture. I should have been pissed. But honestly, it was so melodramatic I laughed out loud. Still, the pressure worked. My toll revenue plummeted as fewer drivers used the road. Karen had successfully guilt-tripped her people into taking the long way around. Fine by me. Less dust on my windows. But then something unexpected happened. A few days later, I started getting calls. First, just 1 or 2, then over a dozen. Residents from Desert Crest, low-key and cautious. They wanted to know, was the road really mine? Could they still use it if they wanted to? I realized then that Karen hadn't just overplayed her hand. She'd created a fracture, so I made my move. I launched a pilot program called Neighbor Pass, a free 6-month access plan for any Desert Crest resident who registered directly with me. No fees, no legalese, just a click-through waiver that acknowledged the road was private property and they were using it with my permission. There was only one catch. You had to opt out of HOA membership. Not legally binding, just symbolic. You checked a box. I voluntarily withdraw my support from Desert Crest Canyon HOA's representation on my behalf. Within 48 hours, over 70 people signed up. It was chaos. Karen lost her goddamn mind. She started sending cease and desist letters to her own community members. People posted screenshots online. She accused them of aiding a known antagonist and even threatened to revoke their access to HOA-maintained facilities. Someone replied, "You mean the pool that's closed 3 months a year and the broken tennis court?" Things spiraled. Residents began showing up at HOA meetings, demanding transparency. Where were the funds from the Community Development Fund going? Who authorized the paving? Why had no one seen the actual easement? That's when it broke. One of the HOA board members, a guy named Malik, leaked internal emails to a local reporter. The messages showed Karen had been channeling money through the Community Development Fund to pay expedited fees to county officials for friendly processing. The story dropped like a bomb. Headline: Local HOA accused of backroom deals, private land takeover. Subhead: Forged signature, secret fund, angry residents. I watched it unfold on the news with a beer in one hand and my boots on the porch railing. Karen didn't speak to the press, but her lawyer did. And every time he opened his mouth, the hole got deeper. 2 days later, the story took another turn. I got a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was low, tired, cautious. "This is Ken Randall," it said. "I was the county's infrastructure compliance officer for your district." Past tense. He'd just been fired. "I've got something you're going to want to see," he said. Ken Randall looked like a man who hadn't slept since dial-up internet was still a thing. We met at a diner off Route 86, one of those places where the coffee tastes like battery acid and the eggs come in a perfect yellow circle because someone in the kitchen had mastered the microwave. He sat in the corner booth, wearing a rumpled shirt, dark bags under his eyes, and a nervous energy that screamed whistleblower with regrets. He slid a USB drive across the table like it contained nuclear codes, then immediately wiped his hands on. A napkin like he wanted nothing to do with it anymore. "I can't tell you everything," he said, "but what's on there should point you in the right direction. I didn't touch it at first." "Why me? Why now?" He looked out the window, then back at me. "They tossed me under the bus. Said I overstepped when I approved the Desert Crest bypass, but they were the ones who pushed it through. Karen and that lawyer of hers, Braxton, I think. They used the Community Development Fund to funnel money into expedited processing fees. Made it look clean, but it wasn't. And they made sure the paperwork was too smooth." I raised an eyebrow. "Too smooth?" Ken gave a bitter chuckle. "Real easements always come with complaints, last-minute surveys, conflicting docs. This one, clean as a whistle. No red flags. That's a red flag in itself. Back at my place, I plugged in the drive. What I saw damn near made me spit out my coffee. There were PDFs of internal memos, including one titled Alternative Access Project, Fast Track Strategy. It referenced my parcel number, the planned timeline, the need for external cooperation, forced if necessary, and an attached document labeled Contingency Signature Sheet. Then came the emails, dozens of them. Karen, Braxton, 2 county clerks, and a name I didn't recognize. Bradley Kruger, listed as a civic engagement liaison, but obviously someone who pushed things through on the inside. One exchange between Karen and Kruger read, confirming signature doc for parcel 17B backdated and uploaded, owner unaware, all digital entries flushed. I nearly punched a hole through my desk. This wasn't carelessness. This wasn't bureaucratic confusion. This was a coordinated forgery operation backed by HOA money and executed through local government channels. I called Marcia. She didn't say anything for a few seconds, then, "I'm escalating this. We're not just talking civil damages anymore. This is criminal conspiracy." The next 48 hours were a blur. Marcia filed an emergency motion to introduce the whistleblower material into our pending civil suit. At the same time, she compiled a packet of evidence for the county prosecutor's office and the Arizona State Attorney General. Meanwhile, I reached out to the reporter who'd broken the initial HOA corruption story. I sent him the redacted versions of the emails, the forged documents, and, most damning, a clip of one of the HOA's private Zoom meetings that Ken had managed to save. In it, Karen says, "He'll come around once the road's finished, or he'll sue, and we'll bleed him dry until he caves." They were still talking like I was a speed bump. I was about to become a bulldozer. The article dropped 3 days later. Front page. Headline: Whistleblower, HOA forged land deal, bribed county officials, private road sparks criminal probe. It spread like wildfire. News vans started showing up near Desert Crest. Karen refused interviews. Braxton claimed it was all a misunderstanding. The HOA issued a tone-deaf statement blaming disgruntled neighbors and fake news bloggers. Didn't matter. The public smelled blood. Then the big one hit. Bradley Kruger, the civic engagement liaison, the fixer on the inside, got arrested. The sheriff's office raided his home and office, seized his devices, and within 24 hours he agreed to cooperate. In exchange for leniency, he rolled over faster than a chihuahua in a thunderstorm. He gave them everything: names, timelines, meeting logs. How Karen and Braxton had worked out the forgery protocol. How Kruger had been promised a consulting position in the HOA once he retired. He even turned over audio recordings of Karen bragging about getting her road no matter what it takes. Karen was arrested 2 days later. Charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, falsification of legal documents, unauthorized construction on private land, and abuse of municipal influence. HOA board members started bailing like rats off a sinking yacht. The vice president resigned, the treasurer disappeared, and half the community started demanding a vote to disband the HOA entirely. Me? I stayed quiet. Let the storm do what it does. Then, one evening, I got a knock on my door. Ken Randall. He looked a little better now. Clean shave, new shirt, still haunted, but upright. "You hiring?" he asked, holding up a small metal clipboard. "I know how to manage roads. Thought you might need someone to keep the gate system running." I didn't say anything right away. Just stepped aside and let him in. Sometimes your enemies show you exactly who you need on your side. The courtroom was cold and bright, like a hospital waiting room designed by someone who hated comfort. I sat at the plaintiff's table in a navy blazer I hadn't worn since my last job interview 6 years ago, flanked by Marcia and 2 junior associates who looked like they could dismantle a spreadsheet with their eyes. Across the aisle, Braxton, the HOA's lawyer, looking less smug than usual, and 1 substitute board member whose name I never bothered to learn. Karen wasn't there. She was under house arrest. What had started as a zoning dispute had become a legal maelstrom. Criminal charges, civil suits, depositions, and 1 very angry prosecutor who'd made it his mission to turn Desert Crest into a case study on HOA corruption. But today's hearing was just mine. My civil suit, my land, my damages, and judging by the look on the judge's face when he skimmed the opening briefs, things were about to go very, very badly for the defense. Marcia opened with fire. She laid out the timeline, the forged easement agreement, backdated and submitted before I ever purchased the land, the illegal paving operation carried out under false pretenses, the retaliatory legal filings against me once I objected, the financial sabotage through public notices, and finally, the surveillance footage, the expert topo survey, and the email evidence from Ken and the whistleblower USB. Then she dropped the bomb, an audio clip. Karen's voice, clear as day. He'll cave. If not, we sue until he runs out of cash. Once the county logs it as public access, it's ours. We just need the signature to stick long enough. The judge sat back, eyes half-lidded. Is this authenticated? Yes, Your Honor. Source confirmed by the prosecution in the pending criminal case. Braxton objected. Of course. Claimed it was contextually misrepresented. The judge overruled him so fast, I saw one of the junior lawyers grin. Then came the real knife twist. Ken Randall testified. In a clean shirt and pressed slacks, he told the court everything. How he'd been pressured to approve the construction without verifying land ownership. How he was handed a clean easement file already logged in the system. How he later discovered the GIS data had been edited manually with metadata stripped. Who gave you those files? The judge asked. I received them directly from HOA President Karen Whitman and her legal counsel, Ken replied. I was told it was all cleared through their community development liaison. And did you verify that? I attempted to, but was told any questions would delay funding. I was assured everything was above board. And when did you realize it wasn't? When Mr. Rivers installed toll gates, and I started getting emails from residents demanding to know why they were being charged. That's when I looked deeper. By the time he stepped down, you could feel the shift in the room. Even the court stenographer looked pissed. The defense barely made an effort. Braxton tried to pivot to community necessity and miscommunication, claimed the fund had overstepped, not the board, tried to float the idea that I had profited unfairly from the toll system. Marcia torched that idea in less than 10 minutes. She presented a breakdown of all toll revenue, meticulously logged, and demonstrated that every cent beyond maintenance costs had been held in escrow, pending resolution. Not only that, but I'd already donated nearly $15,000 to a legal aid fund for other landowners battling rogue HOAs. The judge finally leaned forward, hands clasped. Mr. Rivers, what is your primary goal in this suit? I stood up. No script, no speech. Accountability, I said. And to make sure no one else has to fight this hard just to stop their land from being stolen in broad daylight. He nodded once, then ruled, in my favor. The judgment? $2.3 million in compensatory damages to cover land damage, emotional distress, legal costs, and the entirety of the lost use of my property. The HOA was ordered to cease any further operations related to my land, remove all references to the bypass route, and issue a formal apology through their internal communication systems. Braxton asked for a delay in payment. The judge laughed. I'd advise your client to start liquidating their clubhouse art collection. As we left the courtroom, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing. I kept my head down, said nothing. Let Marcia do the talking. She deserved the spotlight more than me. Later that night, I stood at the top of the southern road, staring down its sleek black path, now quiet and empty. No more Audis, no more HOA flyers, no more Karen. The toll kiosk blinked softly in the twilight. Balance, $72.13. New users, 4. Pending 11 monthly passes. Just business now. The dust didn't settle right away. You don't take down a fortress like Desert Crest Canyon's HOA and expect the earth to stop shaking the next morning. No. First comes the paperwork, then the silence, and then the real mess. The reckoning. The judgment went public the day after the ruling. I expected the usual social media noise, maybe a few angry letters or someone spray painting "thief" on my mailbox again. What I got instead was a ripple effect that spread like oil through the HOA scene in Arizona. Within 72 hours, Desert Crest's board crumbled. The treasurer resigned, citing ethical differences. The secretary vanished off LinkedIn entirely. The vice president, Todd, the guy who once called me a toll tyrant during a board meeting, tried to organize a vote to reinstate Karen. It failed badly. Residents flooded the next emergency HOA meeting, held in the community center's multi-purpose Serenity space. I swear to God, that was its name. They came with printed screenshots, billing questions, even maps. One guy rolled in with a poster-sized topo diagram and just pointed at it silently for a full minute. By the end of the meeting, over 40% of Desert Crest homeowners had signed a petition to dissolve the HOA entirely. And through it all, the road kept humming. The toll system I'd set up ran smoother than ever. With HOA influence evaporating, residents began signing up en masse. I expanded the subscription model, added tiered plans, discounts for teachers and veterans, even an off-peak express package that let users bypass queues during rush hour. And Ken, he became the operator. I hired him full-time. He showed up in a fresh uniform, navy work shirt, name stitched over the chest, clipboard under one arm, laptop bag over the shoulder. I gave him a desk in my workshop, a company email, and full admin rights to the road control interface. He took to the job like he'd been waiting for it his whole life. "This system's cleaner than most city toll grids," he said one day, inspecting the hardware. "You know, with the right data, traffic patterns, congestion metrics, we could optimize flow by 20 to 30%. I looked at him and grinned. Be my guest. We added motion sensors, anti-tamper mechanisms, and even a feedback kiosk. A little touchscreen that asked drivers, "Was your passage today smooth and respectful?" Some folks thought it was a joke. Others took it seriously. Either way, the message was clear. This wasn't a war zone anymore. This was infrastructure. But I wasn't done. The lawsuit win gave me the funds to go bigger. I set up a nonprofit called Landline Defense Initiative, a legal and technical support group for rural and private landowners fighting HOA or municipal overreach. Marcia helped design the legal framework, and we built a network of volunteer lawyers, surveyors, and engineers. We even started getting emails from other states. Texas, Nevada, parts of California where HOAs had overstepped and bullied residents into submission. My case had turned into a kind of rallying cry, but not everyone was thrilled. Some ex-HOA members, bitter, embarrassed, or just stubborn, tried to stir backlash. Accused me of turning public need into personal profit, said I was weaponizing land ownership, that I'd turned a dirt road into a toll trap. I didn't argue. I just pointed at the sign we installed at both entrances to the road. Private road, access by agreement only. Funds support local land rights. Trespassers pay double. And honestly, most people got it, especially when they found out I'd waived fees for several elderly residents, and that every month a chunk of the toll income went straight to a relief fund for others fighting similar HOA abuse. Ken once told me, "You turned this place into a proof of concept." I told him, "Nah. I just made leave me alone into a business model." Still, not everything was righteous satisfaction and tidy ledgers. Sometimes I caught myself staring out at the road, remembering the weeks of surveillance, threats, forged documents, the feeling of being ganged up on by a smiling mob with business cards and fake grins. But then a car would drive by, slow at the toll reader, the little green light blinking paid, and I'd remember exactly why I fought. This land was mine. And now, it stood for something more than just acreage. It stood for consequences. The desert has a long memory. Even when the winds shift and the cacti bloom again, it remembers where the blood hit the dirt, where tires carved new paths, and where fences went up to mark lines that weren't supposed to be crossed. It's been 6 months since the judgment came down. Karen Whitman is serving a 7-year sentence in a minimum security facility outside Phoenix. Word is she still denies wrongdoing, blames the socio-political weaponization of property law. Last I heard, she filed an appeal that went nowhere and tried to start an HOA support group inside the prison. Nobody joined. Braxton lost his license. Turns out that forging documents and participating in a conspiracy to defraud a property owner doesn't go over well with the Arizona State Bar. Who knew? Desert Crest Canyon? What's left of it is still standing, physically at least. The fancy gates still open and close. The stucco homes still glow under soft porch lights, and the lawn care crews still show up every Thursday like clockwork. But the board is gone. The HOA charter was suspended indefinitely after a supermajority vote. They're trying to transition into a voluntary neighborhood council, but from what I hear, most people just want to be left alone now. Can't blame them. The Southern Road is quiet most mornings. Just a few regulars, teachers, contractors, the old guy with the Ford Ranger who waves every time he passes the kiosk. Sometimes I wave back. Sometimes I just nod. Ken has become something of a local legend. He runs the gate system, tracks analytics, and writes quarterly reports like he's managing a small city's transit department. He even introduced a Good Neighbor discount program. If you volunteer 10 hours a month at a community org, you ride free. I let him name it. I didn't even ask what it cost me. Some things are worth more than margins. And me, I sleep well now. I finished adding a new wing to the workshop, a second bay for restoration projects, maybe even a custom-build business down the line. I'm not rushing it. The land's quiet, and I've learned the value of pacing. Peace, after all, isn't just the absence of noise. It's knowing no one's coming over your line with a forged paper and a smug smile ever again. Sometimes reporters still call. They want interviews, features, quotes about the man who beat the HOA. I say no more often than not. I didn't fight for fame. I fought because someone tried to make me invisible on my own property. But every now and then, I get an email from someone in another state. Louisiana, Idaho, Montana, saying, they tried the same thing here. How did you stop them? And I send them everything. The templates, the footage, the legal strategies, even the blueprints for the toll system. I tell them what I tell everyone now. Make it cost them every time, every inch. Don't let them walk through you like you're just landscaping. A couple of months back, I installed a new sign near the kiosk. Metal, engraved, backlit at night by soft solar LEDs. It reads, Private Road, access by permission, only trespassers pay double. HOA, not welcome. Sometimes people laugh at it. Sometimes they take photos. But every now and then, someone slows down, reads it real careful, and nods, like they know exactly what it means. Like they've lived it. And that's good enough for me.